Good morning and welcome to Webinar Tuesday. My name is Mary Jo Williams and I'll be your moderator for today's session. Today we are having the SBA present on the Paycheck Protection Program relaunch overview. And for those of you that are new, the VI SBDC is a joint venture arrangement between the U.S. Small Business Administration and the University of the Virgin Islands. And as such, what we do is we provide technical assistance for people that are thinking of starting their business, growing their business, in business, and want to go out of business, and anywhere along that continuum. And our counseling services are available at no charge. And during the course of the at the end of the presentation, you'll see our contact information. So on behalf of our state director, Mr. Ted Gutierrez, I want to welcome Mr. Wayne Huddleston from the SBA and give control of the presentation to him. Mr. Huddleston.
All right, good morning. Thank you, Mary Jo. As Mary Jo said, my name is Wayne Huddleston. I am the Senior Area Manager for the U.S. Small Business Administration here in the territory. I want to say thank you to Mary Jo and the rest of the SBDC staff for hosting this presentation today. As she said, the SBDC is our primary resource partner here in the Virgin Islands, and they do an outstanding job of not only providing technical support to businesses in the territory, but also as a partner for us to host informational webinars such as this. I'm also joined by my colleague, Lisa Chambly-Acqui, who will be managing the slides and also answering questions at the end. Today's topic is over the Paycheck Protection Program. As many of you have probably read in the news or seen on TV, the PPP program has recently been authorized for an additional draw of funds for businesses who wish to take advantage of it. So we're going to cover the very basics of that program today, and we are going to leave plenty of time at the end to answer your questions regarding the program. But that's the primary thing we're going to speak on today. So the agenda on the next slide, we're just going to cover these 5 things. Where we are with the program, the key dates with the program. We're going to talk about the difference between first draw loans and second draw loans. We're going to talk about forgiveness, provide a few little updates there, and then talk about just what to do next and the resources you have going forward as you, if you intend to take advantage of the PPP program. So the first thing I'm talking about is where we are with the program. As many of you have read, Congress had been debating this second draw for quite a while. And when it was finally approved to come out, they prioritized communities that they felt were the hardest hit and did not have as much access, or what they call underserved communities in the area. And so they had a few little changes to the program. One thing I would like to point out, though, is that while there may have been underserved communities in areas across the United States, the U.S. Virgin Islands was not one of those communities. We had a larger penetration of PPP loans per number.
Ms. Chambly-Acqui, can you continue? It looks like Mr. Huddleston dropped out.
All right, so let me just come off a video until he comes back on. Let's see. Okay. All right, can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead, please.
All right. So what Wayne was saying is that in the USVI, we had the highest concentration and participation of small businesses, both in the PPP and the EIDL loans nationwide, with that hitting 70% of the coverage of small businesses. That's how many small businesses in the USVI participated in the PPP loan. There is still, opportunity, and those are US census sources. So we're not sure exactly if it's, best updated, but we want to make sure that everyone who can gets the opportunity to take part in it. When the loans were initially opened, and that was on the 11th of January, only community financial institutions were able to service. And in the Virgin Islands, all of our lenders locally are major lenders. And so they are able to open their platforms from today. So we did have a time frame where, because we don't have credit unions who guarantee SBA loans or smaller, unless you had one of those relationships with a community lender stateside, then we did not really have the opportunity to participate last week. That's being rectified today because it's open to all lenders from today. And we will be continuing to provide trainings, material, and assistance. Things are changing rapidly. We get updates pretty much every day. So what applies today may, may be changed for tomorrow. And that's kind of, I think you all went through the first round, so you know how many changes there were as SBA tries to implement the legislation in the most transparent and accountable manner. I'm just gonna, all right. So these were some of the dates. We mentioned that January 11th, PPP opened its first draw PPP loan applications, and it was just for first draw, not for second draw, from community financial institutions. On January 13th, same target, same lenders, the CFIs, but they were able to handle applications for second draw PPP loans. On January 15th, PPP opened for first and second draw applications to lending institutions with $1 billion or less in assets. And today, January 19th, PPP opens first and second draw applications to all other participating lending institutions. And just, locally, all of our banks, so that would be, Banco Popular, First Bank, Oriental Bank, Merchants Bank, Bank of St. Croix, VI, EDA, the Economic Development Bank. Those are all participating. I don't think I've forgotten anyone, but those will all be participating. As we haven't heard anything different from them. So that's what you should know. Now, this round of PPP only goes until March 31st. So all applications must be submitted. And if we learned anything from the last round of, do not wait until March 31st. A lot of the lenders close their platforms a week before because they also have to process all of these things and get it up to SBA by that time frame. Wayne, am I seeing that? Are you back on?
Yes, I don't know why that happens, but I was kicked off. But you can...
No, you go right ahead. Okay. I'm going to defer to you, and if you drop off again, I can always pick up.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, everyone. It sounds like Lisa had covered this, and thank you, Lisa, for picking up when I got kicked off there. I don't know what I would do without you when things like that happen. But if you can go to the next slide. I think the big thing to take from this slide that Lisa just went over, though, is that this program goes until March 31st, whether you're getting a first draw or second draw. It is fully intended that the program is going to end March 31st. Now, Congress may do something else, but I anticipate that with many people receiving vaccinations now, that program will end at March 31st. So next slide, please, Lisa. Okay, first draw PPP loan eligibility. So if you're getting a first draw, we talked about what a first draw loan is, I believe, earlier. And it did mention that even if you're getting the first draw, if you're getting it now as opposed to before, you do have additional flexibility and eligibility criteria there. So there are a few entities that are newly eligible: housing cooperatives, marketing organizations, things such as a chamber of commerce, many 501c6 organizations and eligible news organizations are examples of that businesses that now are eligible under the new program. So if you're a chamber or housing cooperative or something like that, and you didn't take advantage of PPP, now you can on the first draw. But all the other businesses that were under it are, well, take that back. Not every business, but small businesses, the vast majority of businesses that were eligible under the first draw or eligible previously are now eligible again for this next opportunity for a PPP. Next slide, please. So what is a second draw loan? It is simply a second draw for people who have already previously received a PPP loan. There are some additional criteria involved there. You must have 300 employees or less. You can't have more than 300 employees. And you must be able to show that you suffered a 25% reduction in gross receipts. For most borrowers, the maximum loan amount is similar to the maximum loan amount for the first draw, which is 2.5 times your payroll costs up to a maximum of $2 million. However, if you're a borrower that is in the food accommodation services sector, so restaurants, for example, you are eligible to take a second draw of up to 3.5 times your average monthly payroll costs with the same cap, up to $2 million. But that extra multiplier does help for many restaurant owners. A second draw loan must submit a different form. It's SBA Form 2473 SD. All of these forms can be found on our website, sba.gov/PPP. We have all the rules of the programs, frequently asked questions, and all the borrower forms applications that are on that site. But you will submit that to your lender. You will not be submitting that to SBA. Next slide, please. So there are some eligibility criteria, as I mentioned earlier. You must have used or show that you are about to use all of the first draw. So if you have not used your first draw, you cannot apply for a second and get that. You must show that that you have used those funds. You don't have to have them forgiven yet, but you've got to show that you've used them. You can't have any more than 300 employees, and you must demonstrate, as I mentioned before, a 25% reduction in gross receipts between comparable quarters in 2019 and 2020, and they must be comparable quarters. So you can't use one quarter in 2019 and compare that to a different quarter in 2020. For loan forgiveness, you still, just as you apply for PPP through your lender, you apply for forgiveness through your lender as well. And you must provide that information through your lender, and they will apply through PPP to get that forgiven through SBA. You do not apply through SBA on that. One update, well, a couple updates that there are in the forgiveness process. For those of you who have started that process on the first draw, you may recall that if you had received an economic injury disaster loan and you received an advance on that loan, that SBA was deducting your forgiveness amount equal to the amount of the advance that you had already received. That provision has been eliminated. So if you have not already received your forgiveness, you do not have to worry about an advance being taken out of that forgiveness amount. So for example, if you had a $100,000 PPP loan and you would also receive a $10,000 advance, prior to this legislation, you would only receive $90,000 in forgiveness, but now you can receive the full amount. So PPP loans are not taxable income. That was another change that was done. Expenses paid with PPP loan funds are now tax deductible. You can work with your accountant for details on that or consult with the IRS. There are expanded forgivable expenses that are permissible for any PPP loan not already forgiven. Those expanded permissible expenses could include personal protective equipment that the business had to buy for their employees. It could be an online platform to go virtual with your business, something that can be tied directly to the pandemic. We still highly encourage you to use all of those funds for payroll, just for ease of simplicity and for ease of forgiveness. You don't want to add additional headaches in the process unless you absolutely need to. But if you must include additional expenses and you cannot spend all those funds on payroll, then you are allowed to spend up to 40%, and those items that can be forgiven are a little bit expanded in this legislation. Coming soon, there will be another simplified forgiveness application for PPP loans of 150,000 and under. So I expect we will be posting that on our website before long. So you want to stay tuned to sba.gov PPP for the latest information. Next slide, please. So what to do now and additional resources you have. So first thing is you want to work with your lender. Now that it is January 19th, every single lender, every SBA lender, put it that way, is now eligible to process PPP loans. So if you've already received a PPP loan in the past, highly encourage you to work with the same lender. If you haven't, you can just work with one of the 5 big lenders or 6 lenders here in the territory: Merchants, Bank of St. Croix, Popular, Oriental, First Bank, or even the Virgin Island Economic Development Bank. All are eligible to process PPP loans. You can start that now. You can also look on Lender Match. There were, in the last opportunity for PPP, we had an additional 30 lenders from outside the territory who offered PPP loans to businesses within the territory. So if you already have a banking relationship with a lender outside the territory, it may be easier for you to work with them, and by all means do it. There are fintech companies as well that are processing PPP loans. But again, you don't want to make the process any more complicated than you want to. I highly encourage you to work with a lender that you already have and knows you. And then visit PPP or sba.gov/PPP for the latest information. As I've mentioned multiple times, we will always be posting the latest information we have on that site for you. And then follow us. You can go to sba.gov/PR, and you can follow the latest information on a Puerto Rico and Virgin Island district office. You can sign up to get updates from us on that site, and you can also follow us on Twitter. And I believe the next slide has more information on local assistance for us. So here's my information. You can contact me. That phone number to 340-473-7945 rings directly to my cell phone. I cannot always answer it, but if you leave me a voicemail, I can typically get back in touch with you within 24 to 48 hours. However, easiest is to email me. My email is below, wayne.huddleston@sbi.gov. We also have our outreach and marketing specialist, Lisa Shamley-Kui. Her cell phone there, 202-941-8015 is the best way to get in touch with her by cell phone. And then of course, her email is located there. And as I mentioned, email is really the best way to get in touch with us. There are also plenty of resources here. The Small Business Development Center can help you with technical assistance on PPP, but also many other aspects of your business. They are there to help your business from inception to growth to selling the business when you're done with it. They can help with all stages of it. So very useful resource for you. And their email and phone numbers are located there, and you can schedule an appointment or visit any of their workshops. And then finally, before we get to questions, we'd like to hear some of your feedback. If you have a moment, please visit sba.gov/feedback. We just ask a few questions there about whether this presentation is helpful to you. We would like to know and gather your feedback as to whether it is helpful. And if you have any suggestions for us, please let us know there. But with that, we will open it up to questions. You can either type them into chat and we will answer them that way, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question by voice and we can answer it that way as well. So let's see, I'm looking at chat. I don't know if I have all the chat. I do have one here though. It says, I did not apply for PPP because I didn't have any employees until, it looks like January 12th. Am I eligible to apply for this round? I did receive the EIDL. So I'm not sure if you put in the correct date though, but if you didn't have any employees until January 12th, then I don't see how you could apply. You need to have a comparable show of your payroll expenses from before, and then show how the pandemic impacted that. So if you opened during the pandemic, that would be hard to show. So I don't think you could apply for the PPP. You can apply, but I don't think you can be approved. Is it possible to apply for both PPP1 and PPP2? Yes, but not at the same time. So if you never received a PPP loan, you may apply and get your first draw now. If you can expend and legitimately show that you expended all that before March 31st, then I think conceivably you could apply for a second round of PPP. So yeah, there's no rule against it.
Can I have a question?
Sure.
For the second round, with respect to the employee headcount, we apply and we put at this moment of applying so many employees. When it comes to forgiveness, are we going to have the same headcount as in the moment of applying? Do they need to be restored, and by when?
So are you saying you have right now a reduced, I'm guessing you have a reduced number of employees right now?
We try to restore, yes, as many as we can. And right now we have, for example, we have 10, but we don't know if things are going to get better or worse. Okay, if we have to let go, we don't want to. If we have to let go, in order for us to be forgiven, the headcount will have to be restored by the number that we originally are applying today, or that will be waived, or how will work? Will it be headcount? How will work the forgiveness in the second round?
It doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same number. However, your forgiveness approval will be based on a headcount that you have. So if you do not hire back that full amount, let's just say, for ease of math, you had 20, you now have 10, you've been approved for a PPP loan. Maybe you can bring back to 15, but you can't bring back to 20. Well, that PPP loan is based on 20. So if you can, if you use the whole 24-week period, if you can expend all those funds on payroll, I don't believe it matters that you didn't bring back all of your employees, as long as you brought back some. Lisa, you may be able to explain whether that reduction in headcount applies in this PPP as it did in the first round as much.
So the intention of the loan remains the same, and it's to keep employees on the payroll. So if you take a second application for PPP, or even a first application, the premise is that you are taking the loan to keep employees on the payroll. So for the purposes of the covered period, let's just say you get the loan on February 15th and you choose 8 weeks, you have to show that you kept your employees for those 8 weeks of the covered period. If you chose 24 weeks, then it should show that you were able to keep the employees. Whether or not you're able to increase or you have to lay off people, it should be after the covered period, so that when you're applying for forgiveness, what you the number of employees that you applied for and the number of employees that you paid during the covered period should be the same. That's my understanding of it. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I'm a little confused because we are applying based on 2019 employee headcounts and payroll, correct? And now we don't have the same amount, but we're applying based on the 2019. Will I have to restore the same as 2019?
So you have the ability to apply either on 2019 or 2020 financials. So you have that choice. If you are doing it based on 2019 financials for payroll, I understand the confusion in terms of if you've had to downsize in 2020. Yeah. But, you know, if you're doing it based on a payroll that you expect to be paying out, I think that's where you want to meet, you want to keep the closest accounting purposes. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one more question, and that's it. We were already forgiven for the first round, but we have the EIDL. Does that mean that it will be forgiven. We were already forgiven like a few weeks ago. And I saw that if you are forgiven now, they will forgive that portion too. We don't have to like deduct it from, if we already were forgiven, will that apply to us?
From our read, and for right now, and again, it might change, it's only you got the EIDL advance deducted from the top of your forgiveness, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So my understanding is going forward, those who have not applied, that will come into play, but that those have already been forgiven. We haven't received any information on, if they'll be reimbursed or if the banks will be reimbursed that on. So that remains uncertain. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Is it just me, or if you're planning to come on and ask a question, self off mute one at a time, maybe put up your hand. If not, we ask that you keep yourself on mute only to minimize the background noise.
Thank you.
Okay, there's lots of questions in the chat that we should get to. Wayne, you want me to take a few, or you want to take a few? How do you want to do this?
Why don't you take a few right now, and then I'll jump in later. I'm not sure if I'm seeing them all since I was kicked off earlier, but there are more coming in.
Okay, so which quarter gross receipts do we need to submit for eligibility? So eligibility, you're looking at, again, if you've been in business for a year, you're looking at the full year payroll, not quarter gross receipts, as far as I understand. The gross receipts for eligibility, that would only be
just to make sure people understand, gross receipts are, it's my understanding, gross receipts are used for the calculation of your economic injury disaster loan. For the PPP program, the key factor is your payroll expenses. So gross receipts would not come into factor in that one. So you would use your payroll expenses, and you would use comparable quarters. So if you're using a 2019 quarter, that's great. Then you need to use the same 2020 quarter. Or if you're using early first quarter of 2020, then you need to use gross receipts for 2021. But they just need to be comparable.
And it's really to show that you have
That's the gross receipts. I meant payroll, sorry.
It's really to show that you have suffered a 25% net operating loss between comparable quarters. So as long as you were in business for both the same quarters, you can't mix the quarters. So you can't say, I lost 40% or 60% in Q2 2020 against Q1 2019. It has to be similar quarters that you were in business, and you have to show that. So that's to show eligibility for a second draw PPP loan. Is that so? Yeah. So a little bit of there. Let's see.
And I see a question here. If the company did not have employees until October of 2020, can it still apply for a PPP loan? I guess you could apply, but I think it's important to keep in mind the intent of PPP is to assist businesses that have been negatively affected by the pandemic. So the pandemic began in March of 2020. If you opened a business in October of 2020, I don't know if you can make the case that you were affected by the pandemic. You'd have to show in some way. So I guess you can still apply. I'm not sure you could be approved. You'd have to find a way to show how the pandemic hurt your business.
So my understanding there, just to add to that one, is that again, for whether it's a first or a second draw, businesses have to show that they were in business by February 15th, 2020. You had to be in business prior to February 15th, 2020, Wayne, yeah? And if you did not have employees.
Yes, I forgot about that. Yep.
Okay, and if you didn't have employees, then you could apply as a self-employed person or an independent consultant. If it was just you up to February 2020, then you can apply in that light. But you can't really apply if you only started, you can't apply as a company with payroll if you only started getting employees in October 2020. So basically your baseline is what applied in prior to February 15th, 2020.
Correct. I'm glad I forgot that provision is in the original program, and that's still in effect.
Okay, so this one, if we have an income tax refund or other grant receipts, do we have to consider that as receipts, as income for that quarter? Wayne, I will defer. I'm not sure about that.
Other grants, receipts, we have to consider receipts as income for that quarter. So I'm guessing this is a sole employee. I think if that's how you show your income, if your business, I don't think a tax refund would apply. But if your business receives grants as a way of operating, then I would be considered income, I believe. You'd really have to get into details of how your structure, if you are a sole proprietorship, how your income is. You might want to check with your accountant on that. But
and if you don't have an accountant,
yeah, I think
financial advisor via SBDC.
All right.
Similarly, question, this business started in July 2019, but didn't start paying payroll until March 2020. Taxes haven't completed. So how to show payroll to the lender. So really you should look at what income you showed or what happened between July 2019 and February 15th, 2020, and use that as your baseline for applying for the PPP first draw.
I believe some of the subsequent questions are similar, so I'm going to skip down a little bit more. If a business did not receive a PPP and during the first draw before August 8th, do we apply to PPP 1 or PPP 2? If you have not received a first draw, you cannot receive a second draw. So you'll be applying as a first draw recipient if you have not received one of those yet. Good morning. If you got the first PPP, only payroll, not other expenses added, can you add those expenses while applying for second draw? So to be clear, on PPP, it is just a set formula, and that is 2.5 times your payroll. There are not extra amounts added on the approval process. So if you, so whatever you approve for PPP, that's what it is. It's 2.5 times your payroll. The other expenses do not come into the approval. They do come into for forgiveness. So if you have not applied for forgiveness and you need to include, and you would like to include expenses, you can up to 40% of the amount of the approved PPP loan. But they're separate loan draws. You can't combine something with first PPP draw with a second PPP draw. Hopefully that answers your questions. I think I understood what you were asking, but if I did not, please come on.
And just remember, whatever, if you're applying for the second draw, it's really on payroll, but your use of the funds can, it can be up to 40% on non-payroll expenses. So it's not about how much you'll get, it's about how you apply the funds that you do get. For the second draw of PPP, do we have to keep the same number of employees as we had in the first draw? Probably not. I mean, lots has changed in a year. As long as when you're applying, you have, an accounting of the employees that you're applying for now. So that let's say you're applying for 5 employees, but you had 10 in 2019, then you're showing that that's your average payroll for currently going forward, whether it's for 8 or 24 weeks or anything in between. Does the second round of PPP go off payroll from pre-March 2020, or is it the payroll from the last quarter?
It's my understanding it's pre-March 2020.
Yes. I think the language says you can choose either 2019 or 2020, but that looks as it as a, you know, as a full annual so that they can then determine what your monthly average and then multiply it by 2.5. It's to come back to the formula.
Right.
I have a question that someone sent to me directly, and I'm not exactly sure what they're asking, but it says, where did it go? I lost it. Are there any platforms to assist applicants who lack access to online applications via lenders?
So
Not a
on our website, we have full instructions on the application process that are available on our website. The applications are there, the instructions for them are there, a document frequently asked questions are there on the website. But to actually apply, you should be working with that lender directly. We cannot help really with the application process. That would be through your lender. You have to ask them that.
Yep. And then, you know, I don't know if underlying in that question, it's somebody who, you know, is having difficulty navigating the whole online application, whether it's through their lender or otherwise. And you know, the recommendation would be to work with, you know, a close partner or a family member or your lender themselves, or maybe somebody in VI SBDC to help that person kind of overcome and deal with the online specifics for the application.
Thank you.
How is a non-dispersed or under-reviewed disaster loan impact the PPP application? So there are two separate loans for disaster. One is the EIDL for COVID, and one is the PPP, and they do not, I don't think they impact. Wayne, unless you have a different understanding.
They do not. You're right. They do not impact.
If we assist our clients with PPP2, there is a limit of fees charged to the client as in PPP1. So if you hire an accountant or hire a tax advisor, I think that is separate, but the government has ensured that there are no fees directly to the borrower who applies through the lender or to the lender to make it most accessible to the majority of small businesses. If you as a small business choose to hire an accountant or you know, or a lawyer or whatever to prepare your application, that is an independent contract as far as my understanding goes. And Wayne, I don't know if you have a different understanding of it.
Nope, nope, you're right. So what about if you didn't apply for the right amount of PPP, can you change this draw the right amount, or you get same amount you got last time? So if you believe that you mistakenly did not show all of your payroll from before, and that the calculation was less than it should have been, then you can do two things. You can also have your first draw reconsidered, but you don't. You just want to submit what is actually true. So if you did not submit the right payroll for the calculation, you can submit a different one. It doesn't have to be the exact same as your previous PPP loan, is my understanding.
As long as there's evidence to back it, that's what you should be submitting.
Right.
Wayne, I thought, will SBA enforce?
Yeah, it's my understanding you should not be charged to pay agent fees from PPP. Banks will comply with the law. If you can just send, if you're in Puerto Rico, I would send the Puerto Rico office, or you can send it to me if you believe you're being charged excessive fees from your bank. that you shouldn't be with regards to PPP, just let us know and we can follow up with that.
I have a different reading of the question. Wayne or Nestor, I don't know if you want to come on. SBA enforced banks to pay agents. And I am thinking agents would be external parties who help borrowers with the banks. That's how I read it. And
yes.
the government law is really between the government and the borrower and the government and the lender, and not third parties.
My question is because in the original CARES Act, it specifically said that agents will be paid from the 5% commission of the bank. It was stated in the law. And in Puerto Rico, no banks, or in my case, no any of my client or any of my application that I send my client, the bank won't pay my fees. And any other college that I know, nobody get their fees paid from the bank. I think that's against the law.
Well, yeah, so they can charge fees, but the banks, they submit that to SBA and SBA will reimburse the bank. So if you can give us the specific examples where your agent was not paid those fees, I think we can have someone follow up to see, was your bank paid for those fees and did they just keep it? And that would be something that, we'd have to take up as a complaint with your bank. So we'll see, but yeah, banks can submit as part of that application to SBA is that there were agent fees involved for processing and we pay that to the bank. And they should be passing that on to your agent. But why don't you send us a more descriptive email of what you're seeing and maybe your loan number and others, and we'll see if we can follow up on it for you.
Okay.
This will be my first draw for how long is a period of payroll that I have to submit. Really depends on how long you've been in business. If you've been in business for several years, you can choose either your 2019 or 2020 financials to submit for your first draw, from which your payroll will be assessed. If you were in seasonal business, then I think the rule is 12 weeks, as a period of 12 weeks that you submit. So it really depends on the kind of business. If it's a full-time seasonal, when you open, that kind of thing. Wayne, the one for Jose, I'm self-employed filing taxes in multiple states. Will I have to apply PPP in one bank or for a bank from each state?
Just one bank.
Once the first draw application is filled, where can it be submitted? It should be submitted to the lender with whom you have a primary relationship as a first option. And then if you don't get through or you find you're not getting responsiveness, then you can go to Lender Match and see if someone else will satisfy your request. Up to how many weeks can you use the second PPP loan? You can choose to use it between 8 and 24 weeks. But you have to put that up front in terms of how many weeks do you want to use it for. And I think, so it's not just 8 or it's not just 24. If you say I'm using it within the period of 12 weeks from disbursement, then as long as it's between 8 and 24 weeks and that's specified, then that's my understanding of the way it's written. Wayne, I don't know if you have a different understanding.
No, that's correct. Yep. The covered period has a maximum of 24 weeks.
And a minimum of 8 weeks.
Okay, this is Mary Jo again. I put in a question that someone emailed to me. It said on the first PPP, our lender take out the amount paid for FICA and Medicare to employees. 2 weeks later, they include the amount because a guidance update. I request an increase for PPP loan 1, but they said there's no way on the portal to provide that service. What can I do?
My understanding, very few exceptions in terms of where first draw PPP first draw PPP borrowers can increase the amount, very strict guidelines on that. So the recommendation would just be to apply for a second draw.
Thank you.
We still have 14 minutes before 11 o'clock. If anyone wants to come on and ask questions or pepper us with some more questions. And until then, I mean, maybe what we could do is just provide you a little bit of an update with the EIDL loan, which is the other disaster loan. As most of you know, it's a loan, so that one's not forgivable, but it has been extended from, it has been extended until December 31st, 2021. So that is another option if your business is still struggling to recover from COVID. And again, if you go on sba.gov, the application form is there, and you know, send us an email and we can always provide you with the specifics, but all of the terms and conditions of an EIDL loan as another option for funding during COVID, to help your business. If you haven't already taken a loan, it's still available for another year. So just thought we'd add that in. If you incorporated an LLC in June 2020, that is later than the businesses that apply for PPP have to be in operation prior to February 15th, 2020, Jose. If you were kind of like self-employed or acting as an independent before then that's how you would have to apply. As a self-proprietor, whatever the business was prior to February 15th, 2020. And if you're applying for an EIDL, it's February 1, 2020. So June 2020 would be too far along. You can't apply for a PPP. You know, that's kind of like 4 months later than the threshold. Should we apply directly to SBA for an extension of the EIDL loan payment? The EIDL loan payment is 30 years to pay with 12 months deferment. So those are the rules of the EIDL loan. And I think those are, you know, yeah. Wayne, I don't know if there is any leeway on that or any flexibility. Is Wayne there or did he drop off? I think he may have dropped off.
Yeah, I don't see him.
Okay, he probably got frozen and he will come. So, okay.
Lisa, I believe that they would have just have to contact SBA. But as far as I know, those payments were, once they decided on the fixed term, that's going to be the term. But I would just say,
yeah, the term is up to 30 years for payment, and the deferment is for 12 months. So you no payment for 12 months after you get the EIDL loan. Interest accrues if you're a small business at 3.75 for the first 12 months. And then payments have to be made to pay.gov, you know, after that 12 months, and then up to, you know, the payment terms are very reasonable. So if an extension of the EIDL loan payment, if that's an extension of the deferral or an extension, you'd have to, you know, speak directly to your loan officer at SBA.
But you're right, you can't extend past 30 years, obviously.
No. The EIDL advance will be increased to 10K, or will it be limited to 1K per employee? We're still waiting on guidance on that specific area. We've heard it, but until we get exact procedures, we can't provide that guidance. We had applied for an SBA loan, which was approved and credited, but we returned it as we didn't expect COVID situation to go for so long and return the funds. Can we reapply? If that was an idle loan and it is within 6 months, then yes, you can reapply using the original idle loan ID. And you can do it as a reconsideration. If it is past 6 months, then you should reapply as a new loan for an idle loan. I thought you said payments were extended to December 2021. No, the idle loan application is extended to December 2021. So prior to December, well, you know, at December 2020, we thought that the idle was going to close on December 31st, 2020. And on the very last day or a couple of days, they extended the ability to apply for an idle loan from December 31st, 2020 to December 31st, 2021. So you have the ability to apply for an idle loan up to December 31st, 2021. It wasn't payments, no payments extended to December 2020. And whenever you got your idle loan, payments are deferred from 12 months or for the first 12 months from your date of disbursement. Ooh, somebody wants to help me with Edgardo's.
Yeah, so Edgardo just sent a message to Nestor to give him a call.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Lisa, real
before
quick.
that, hi, good evening. I'm Edgar Castellano. Before all that message, I sent something about after fill the first draw PPP application, where did I submit it?
So you submitted, Edgardo, you submitted to whichever lender you have a relationship with, an ongoing relationship with.
Well, I asked to Banco Popular where my commercial account is, but they answered me that we got to use your small business administration webpage. So I understand that they don't work with this in this new season.
So I think if they're saying you have to work with the SBA web page, there are 2 COVID-19 disaster loans provided by SBA. One is the economic injury disaster loan, or what we know as the idle loan. And that is a loan that is not forgivable. And that one you apply directly through sba.gov/EIDL. The second loan is the Paycheck Protection Program, which is disbursed not through SBA, but through 5,500 lenders nationwide, all of whom handle SBA guaranteed loans. Banco Popular is one of those banks. So if it is the Paycheck, the PPP loan, Banco Popular, effective today, will be opening their portal. We haven't heard anything different for PPP loans, but sometimes borrowers mix up what's a PPP loan and an idle loan. The idle loan is the one that is 3.75% over 30 years for small businesses. A PPP loan is 1% over 2 years for small businesses that is fully forgivable if all of the proceeds are used for payroll, or a minimum of 60% and a maximum of 40%. So we want to make sure, you want to make sure which one you're applying for. If it's the idle, it's SBA. If it's PPP, it's through your lender.
Yeah, so I have to ask again to an officer of Banco Popular, because I did ask 2 weeks ago before the opening.
Yes. Yes. So today would be a good day to go back to them and say, we understand, or I understand that your portal should have been open, all of the other lenders to accept PPP loans. Here is my application. I want to apply.
So you said that at the Banco Popular webpage, should be a link for submit that application.
Yes, and if you have an email for your commercial lender, I would say send an email straight to that person and kind of, press a little bit.
Okay.
And everybody should just keep in mind that for most lenders, they have been able to start accepting application for a matter of hours. So they just started this morning. So if they ideally in a perfect world, they're going to have it all set up and ready to go, but they may not. I would cut them a little bit of slack, but if you have a contact of a person in there, each bank is different. They may say, we can't have it open until tomorrow or this afternoon, but keep in mind, they were all eligible to start accepting as of just this morning. And so same for that other question. If someone said they use Square for the first round that are not available yet, they may be available now. They were allowed to this morning. So I would check again. But if you don't want to use Square, you don't have to. You can use another lending institution if you prefer. You are not locked in to using the same lender for your second draw as you did the first draw. I mean, it's easier, but you don't have to.
Okay.
And the PPP SBA loan number from Square, you should have had some sort of identifying loan number, no matter who your first lender is. So make sure that you put that in your second draw application, even if it's with another lender.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I really have, it's going to be the second time I'm making this question, but I wasn't very, with the answer, wasn't very completely sure. I am one of those merchants that applied for disaster loan, but for some reason it fell into what they call manual review. And now about 5 months into waiting for disbursement. I'm just a little concerned that when applying for this loan, PPP loan, I mean, I fully understand that has nothing to do one with the other, but because we have to report monies are coming in and out, I'm just a little concerned that, should I be stating that I have the money because the loan is approved, although I never got the money, or I don't know if you hear anyone with this type of situation that's a little concerned that the balance sheet might not look right, or someone's going to say something, you didn't, you got this money, but then you apply for the PPP. It wasn't accurate information because later on you got the money from the disaster program 2 months later or whatever. So I'm just a little concerned if this actually is going to have an impact in any way, because, I don't want to get loans, more than I need to. But right now I'm in a situation, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, people who have applied for this other loan, the money never got disbursed, you know what I mean, never got in. But now we are finding a need to apply for this PPP loan because because of cash flow issue.
Yeah.
But my concern is that later on, when they do an audit, whatever, they're going to say, listen, but you had all this money coming in, you never say anything about it. But the reality is, well, I'm applying for it because I really don't know that money ever is going to come in at all. It's been 5 months. Supposedly,
So just to answer your question real quickly, if you are approved for a loan, there's a difference between being approved and receiving the loan. So if you have not received the funds, you do not need to report those as part of your balance sheet because you haven't received them. You can be approved for loans all day long. You can be approved for $1 million worth of loans, but unless you receive them, that's not something you have. So if you're in that process of EIDL, I really would not worry about it. And As
Okay.
again, PPP really only factors in what your payroll was. So I wouldn't worry about it, that those two
Okay.
affecting another. You just want to report truthfully what your balance sheet looks like whenever you're applying for something.
And Jose, the other thing to take into consideration is that if, it's been 5 months, it hasn't been dispersed, and you were worried about, what if I end up taking too many loans and I don't need all of it? The idle, so let's just say you get PPP and then 2 months later you get idle. You can pay back let's just say you sit on it for 6 months until the business picks up. You can pay back the idle loan in its entirety without any penalties if you don't need the money. So don't let that be a concern either.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. If a company already obtained 150,000 in an idle loan, can the company apply for more idle loan funds? The answer is no. The cap is still $150,000, and there is only one idle loan per tax ID. So if it's the same business, you cannot apply for another idle loan.
And we're just now past 11 o'clock, so it's time for us to wrap up our presentation. If anyone has one last question that you'd like us to answer, we'd be happy to. Otherwise, we will end our presentation today.
Wayne, I'm going to ask you a question here real quick.
Sure.
So I don't know if you mentioned it. I know this is PPP focused, but so if a company has already applied for an idle loan and received funds, can they apply again in 2021?
No, no. If it's the same loan, as Lisa said, there's only one economic injury disaster loan, and we're talking specifically about COVID-19. There's only one disaster loan per tax ID. So even if they receive less than 150,000, they cannot apply again. Or now they can request reconsideration of that same loan to see if they can get an increase up to that cap. But the same criteria is in place. So they would have to show that, well, for some reason they didn't show all the information in the previous approval. But that's all. That they can only have one per tax ID for this particular disaster.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. You guys did a great job today.
Yeah, I see what happened with the 2 million cap for idle loans. They decided to reduce it so that it can be spread out among many more businesses. That's as far as we understand.
Yes, as you may recall, very early in the economic injury or very early in the pandemic, the SBA administrator decided to reduce that to $150,000 just because there was just so much money that this involved, that cap needed to be reduced to make sure the government can afford to pay everyone and get something out the door on these. So, all right. Well, with that, I want to say thank you for joining us. We will continue to have presentations, I think starting February 2nd, every Tuesday. The Small Business Development Center is going to host SBA to have a morning topic. So we will continue these on Tuesdays going forward. We will probably be talking about PPP for the next couple of months, but we will also intersperse other topics related to SBA programs in there. And then we will always have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of these webinars. They can be about that particular topic, or they can be about another SBA program. But please mark your calendars for 10 a.m. on Tuesdays, starting February 2nd, hosted by the SBDC. We plan to continue these for a while. So thank you for your time. Again, thank you for the SBDC for hosting us. And finally, if you'd like to give some feedback for us, please sba.gov/feedback. We'd like to hear from you. And until then, take care out there, stay safe, and good luck. Thank you.
Okay, and for those of you that are tuning in next week we will have the webinar, Creating an Online Business Presence for Your Business. That'll be at 10 a.m. next Tuesday on Webinar Tuesday. Lisa, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, I was just going to say, and if the questions come up in between, don't hesitate to email Wayne or myself I was trying to bring up our email addresses, but my screen's not cooperating with me. Here we go. One again. Hold a second so that we can just bring it up and you can have it handy if questions come up in between and you want to ask us. And thank you and have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great to all. Thank you. Bye.